cut for a second.
Forster, and he puts such a lot on, emphasis on coincidence and or is it fate, and a lot of his plots revolve around a huge amount of coincidence. But there's a sort of like, I mean, a fact that's probably only interesting to me, but not to anybody else. But talking about my grandmother, this is a huge coincidence that I experienced, that talking about my grandmother and basing sort of Helen Schlegel, not basing, but getting something from her autobiography, aged 18, from, and taking that into Helen Schlegel, and sort of somehow looking back, and like as Mrs. Wilcox, she looks back to her ancestors and letting them help her. I did that on Howard's End. A few years later, I did a film with Woody Allen, and I was filming in Sicily, in Taormina, and I stayed in this monastery. It was a hotel that used to be a monastery. And I came back. On the day I arrived back, my father was editing his mother's letters, Violet's letters, and there was a postcard on the sideboard. And it was to her husband at the time, dated in 1913. And she said, "Dearest Bongi," name she used to call him, "here's a postcard of this dearest monastery-turned hotel that I've just, that I'm staying in. I've just read Howard's End. Marvellous. Violet." And I thought, it sent a shiver up me, because I thought, how extraordinary that years later I should go and stay in exactly the same hotel as she, and had played Schlegel. It's just that sort of interweaving, and there's something which you think, well, perhaps there is a wonderful spiritual pattern to it all that can be, be perceived as just pure happenstance or coincidence, but ultimately might have a real meaning and fate to it.
Yeah, because Howard's End is a very circular story.
Entirely circular. And all about legacy and spiritual heirs. It's a very spiritual book, which I didn't really get when I was doing it, but I sort of connect with now.
Did you read the book before the script? Or?
Oh, I took the book. No, I read the script, but rather boringly, as I think we all did. We trailed the book around like a Bible, and said to Jim, "Oh, there's a really funny line here. Can I say, making our parts bigger?" And I scoured the book, and the book was it was a wealth of, it had the whole character there, and it was a wonderful book, and a book that you can reread and reread.
Did Jim mind you having the book? Or
No, I don't think he minded at all. In fact, as with confident directors, they love good suggestions, and if you make it, or they love suggestions for them to, judge whether they're good or bad. I remember, I think I put that line about a pole star or something, or going round, "I know the pole star well, you go round and round and round, or he goes round and round and round and you go round with it," or something, I can't remember. It's odd, the irrelevant things that you tend to remember.
We very rarely talk about Ruth. Did you meet Ruth?
Ruth I really loved, and I sort of connected with her too very early on. I remember when I was auditioning, and I said to her, like, "Oh, I'm very worried because Jim doesn't talk to me, or I don't know what to do," and she was just saying, like, "Keep your doubts to yourself." And I thought, what a bizarre thing to say, because I don't believe in that. I think if you've got a doubt, But I think she felt, I really love Ruth, and I loved Jar, both of them. Her husband, who's the funniest, wryest character, who's had to sort of be married, sort of like enforced marriage to this, to Ismail and Jim, and this, unorthodox marriage that Merchant Ivory are, triptych. And so Jarb has, but he's very funny and has a great sense of humour. And Ruth is, she's an extraordinary woman who, she creates the foundation, the cornerstone on which everything rests. But it is a real true marriage between Jim and Ruth in sensibility and Ismail. And Ismail allows this, the other two, I think they said once that they're the most uncommercial beings, and yet somehow Ismail has managed to allow them to create and, fulfill their vision and make it all possible. So he's the wizard. Yeah.
He's very hands-on, Ishmael, isn't he, for a producer? He doesn't sit in his office and count the money he's out.
No. I think Ismail truly is creative. I mean, he wants to do the making, and so I think, and it's natural that he's ended up directing himself. And he's also incredibly impatient. So, if somebody is not going to do it, he'll do it quicker. And, I've many of sort of memory of him mucking in and stopping the traffic in Florence, and there's this sort of like arms akimbo little figure who's just drawn the whole of the traffic of Florence to a total standstill. And feeding the pigeons, getting the pigeon, he's very practical. But that's what I love, is this sort of galvanic sort of enthusiasm. And nothing is impossible for Ismail. Even if you don't really, despite if anyone, if everyone disagrees him, he'll do it, and he'll drag you into, and he'll make you do it. And he is a magician and a wizard.
Okay, should we